Hello, welcome to the Squarebase Show with your hosts, Rob and Val. And today's video, we are going to be giving you the numbers, the graphs, and the stats for the old world.
We got graphs and stats, graphs and stats.
Graphs and stats, all of it. This is brilliant for you as a Sports Center dude, I assume.
As a Sports Center guy, as a person late for the show this morning because I was up late drafting fantasy football. That's right. I love fantasy so much I added to my football too. Not Blood Bowl, everybody. This is a sport called the NFL, American football.
Okay.
And it is one of my great obsessions. And was up way too late doing that last night. And now I get to go from one spreadsheet to another. It's gonna be good.
No spreadsheets. Jump off by saying thank you to my statsman, Warhammer Rob, for putting the stats together, which is the stats we're going to look at. And we're going to be going through where the events took place. We're not going to go through lists. We're going to do that on another show, but we're going to be looking at meta reps and a bunch of other stuff. We've got a good bunch of graphics to look at, so which should be very fun. But before we do that, just thought I'd kind of catch us up for where we are like in the game at time of watching. We are in the summer just gone. Match play guide announced. That's where all the stats are going to be taken from match play guide onwards. We've just had that Cathay Arcane Journal, but buddy, not long until we get our next Arcane Journal, apparently, like in the future. Like big rumors are for like a new Empire, or we got the Tomb Kings going to be popping off along with some Empire, maybe some Slayers as well.
Yeah, I think they kind of they tipped their hand in one of the previews for it, and yeah, so it's a Slayer Army of Infamy. It's some sort of like
Empire,
some sort of magical thing for Tomb Kings, and then Border Princes, which is maybe sort of Dogs of War adjacent.
I think it's like mercenaries, something along those lines. Something like that. But like, yes. So the point is more armies, or specifically more armies of infamy to come, which is pretty exciting. So that's kind of where we're at. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Before we do, Val, how you been? You've been keeping well?
I've been keeping very well. It's been a wild end to the summer as a family man, Rob.
You are a big family.
August is actually wildly busy, but with just fun things I do with my family, my kids, and my wife, and we made the most. We made the most of the lovely weather here in Toronto, and did a bunch of cool stuff. Went to an air show. Went to a national exhibition, the CNE. Shout out the CNE, Carnies Unite. It's like someone blows a Carney conch shell, and then everyone amasses into a giant fair, which Rob has been to.
I've been to. I loved it. I had some poutine there.
I made him go there. I was trying to think. Oh yeah, you would have been here for CCBB. So there was that, and then at some point in the last 48 hours, I started having anxiety dreams about the tournament I'm running in under 2 months now.
Okay.
And
what's got your head up, big boss?
Well, there's just people coming, and there needs to be a well-run tournament for them to attend. So I've been back into extreme organizer mode in the last day or two, and catching up a lot of stuff. I, for example, needed to get some commercial insurance just in case there's a slip and fall.
Very good.
No slipping and falling, please, at the Squarebase Open Toronto on October 18th and 19th.
But if you do,
fully insured, which is really great. Tickets are coming along. If you're interested in coming, please buy a ticket so I know how much terrain to make. I'd really like anyone sitting on the sidelines to really jump in there, please. But I think we're comfortably over 30 at this point, which is a really nice size. The AOS event is selling nicely. The Blood Bowl event is selling nicely.
Great.
So we're going to have a really lovely Games Workshop fantasy weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That is very fun. Did you see that they've announced a new edition of Blood Bowl, 3rd edition, Tomb Kings versus Bretonians?
On a Monday holiday, they announced a entirely new season or edition of Blood Bowl, which did make me sad a little bit because I think my copy of the 2nd edition is. I think I played it once, but anyway, 3rd edition. Why not? The teams look phenomenal. The Bretonians and Tomb Kings,
they look really good, really good. So it was nice to see
that we didn't get.
Yeah, nice to see that that parity also between the old world and Blood Bowl as well. I think is a pretty sweet thing. That's very cool. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear it's going well. I tell you a secret. I run an event almost every weekend. Not this weekend, actually. I'm going to be in Scotland at Tabletop Scotland if anyone wants to come and say hi. Scotland for that. However, every weekend I've realized, it's taken me a while to realize, but every weekend I have anxiety about how the event is going. All weekend people are playing and I'm just stood there and I get everyone drinks and then I'm like, is everyone having fun? And what can I do to make it more fun? And then you're like, do I hire a magician? Like, they're playing the game. What else can I do? What else?
Well, yeah, I mean, but you have the game stuff covered, and also you are perhaps the most consummate host I've ever encountered. Visiting Rob on his home turf, the TSN Arena, or otherwise in Nottingham, is a fantastic host. So I can see why that would you can tell that you care, and that's nice.
No, maybe more that I'm anxious. I think it's more that I'm anxious. That's what I realized. I used to think I was like, oh yeah, like but now I'm just like, maybe I'm just really anxious that everyone's having a good time. But yeah,
hey, that's probably exactly where good hosts come from. So that's all right. Does not matter. But everyone does wind up feeling welcomed and entertained. So that's what matters.
Yeah, we have a 2,600 point event in 2 weeks' time, which I'm quite excited about. And then October, I think we have another sold out foray event.
Foray!
Whoa, they sell out so fast, it's crazy. So very fun, very fun.
Foray is fantastic. Anyone asking? I think we groping in the dark. In the past, I suggested for people starting up to try doing like doubles events. This apparently was a dead end. Foray is the correct way.
Well, apart from Warhammer World here in Nottingham at Games Workshop, did host
World Teams Championship.
Did hold this weekend a doubles event, right? And it had 76 teams of doubles.
76 teams of doubles?
So like,
you can fit that many people in Warhammer World?
Yeah, because there's enough. I think there's enough tables to have like 50 games. So they could have like 100 matches, which means you could have 200 people, right? But
got it.
It was slammed, as I understand it.
They didn't pay for the commercial insurance, so they can cram as many as they want in there.
Just slam them in. So that is a healthy sign, at least, of some Warhammery goodness. But that does lead me on nicely to the content we're about to do, which is the stats. So before we get into the stats, just a couple of notes about me and Val. So I've, along with Rob and various other contributors, have always been involved in the Age of Sigmar Stat Center for a decade now. Pretty much 10 years, I think, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. I'll have to work it out. And pretty much every single week, every Monday, I go through the event results from the weekend. I look at the consistent trends, and then we kind of like once a month, once every maybe 6 weeks or something, we do like a stats recap and kind of like start looking at some numbers. So we've got a lot of like methodology, and I have a lot of experience. But you also have a lot of experience. You used to do the 40K Stat Center with Peter, the Falcon, who now does Old World Charmed, a podcast you can go listen to about the Old World. But what's your take about stats in wargaming? And also to everyone who's watching this, before you watch the rest of it, I'd love you to kind of put, this is what I think about stats, and see if we change your mind or see if we make you think or feel something different. What's your feeling about stats in wargaming?
Yeah, I think they're incredibly informative, and they can show you where the smoke is, so that you can investigate if there's a fire. So, like way back when I got involved with 40K Stats, a dear friend of the show, Peter the Falcon Colosimo, was the first person in 40K that I was aware of. After myself, I took a bunch of stats, basically took all the data from BCP one year, I think it was like 2018, 2017, and just very clumsily crunched it and got an idea of what factions people were playing, what factions broadly were winning, and said, this is way too much work, I will never do it. And then that was heard by someone, Peter, and he started documenting every single GT every single week. And what that created was, for the first time ever in Warhammer 40,000 anyway, we actually had hard numbers on, at tournaments at least, large tournaments, what was winning.
Mm-hmm.
And, instead of it being in my local, this is dominant and you guys are all wrong. That's not OP. This is OP. And there was a bunch of circular logic about things. There was actually something that you could hang an argument around. And then what that led to, I think, too, was like just a more informed discussion about, what was good, and gave people a little bit more grounding in fact. Took a long time, though, for that conversation to develop into something that was something resembling a mature one, for people to start trusting the stats. But it was a really, really cool thing to see, because it really started to inform the game to the point where, those community-driven stats became the things that informed Games Workshop and how they modified and helped or changed or whatever various armies. And sometimes, at their great peril, they also ignored those results and allowed terrible things to happen for long periods of time. So it was both. It was a double-edged sword, as far as I was concerned, and my engagement was concerned.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really important points there. Let's start off with number one. Early in producing Stats for Age of Sigmar, the pushback that specifically got thrown at us on the show was aggressive. Like, so many rude words, so many horrible things said about us online, just grim. Like, for just being like, here is the math. Really, really felt like I was like, hey, the world's round, guys, and people were like, no. So that's something that maybe I feel like that might get encountered in talking about these things in the old world. So a little bit concerned or conscious about that. But having been through that process ourselves, both of us, I know that eventually we're going to end up in a place where people will be like, yeah, this is a useful tool. So I think that's an important thing to talk about. It's also really important. Go on.
Sorry, just to jump on that concept. Like, I think this also, for a lot of people, is a cousin of Math Hammer. So like the idea of the fact that this is a, largely 2d6 dice game, or just a d6 dice game, and like the things that can happen in this game are driven by the results of dice, and therefore you can use basic understanding of probability to give a rough idea of when something should or shouldn't happen. If you are ignorant of those probabilities and you play, and by ignorant I mean just like you don't have them in your mind, and you play the game purely on vibes, and whatever the game has more of a magical feel. It's less mechanical. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it has the dice do what they're supposed to do in that sense, because they just let random things happen and the story unfolds as it goes. When you look at how it actually works and you start focusing on things like math, that does allow you to find efficiencies in those dice, bring out the most powerful stuff, things that are always going to work, et cetera, because you know that the probabilities are higher. And that, for a lot of people, can sort of suck the fun or the magic out of a game. And I think doing meta stats, so like how people and what things are winning and that sort of stuff, is something that for some robs things of its magic. And it's also doing these stats is something that used to be, at least in many parts, a taboo, which is of course net listing. Which I always thought was a silly thing that people were upset about.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are all things that do take away some of the fun of discovery and surprise and things like that. So, like, to the detractors out there, I hear you. I see you. However, you can also play the game without any of this information and just go through your life. I think what it does is it informs players, so that they can do what they can to have an enjoyable experience, especially when they're matching up against strangers, going into a field where not everyone knows what everyone's got, and they're not tooling their armies to be at the same level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To throw myself in there to the chat, the bit that it's worth noting is that these are one of the fundamental elements that I've always wanted to produce for wargaming, because of my initial history with wargaming, in that there was very little data to understand do I suck or does my army suck? And anecdotally, it's really hard to tell the difference when both of you are losing all the time. So you're like, is it me? Is it my army? I don't know. So like that gives you some good insight there, which I think is fun as well. Games Workshop have always also, Games Workshop for a while were doing both meta stats for both AOS and 40k, because you brought up Games Workshop, and then their stats would always run different to what community stats would say. So effectively, they were trying to like cushion the stats, or make the stats seem more like level, so that like there wouldn't be as much outcry or whatever that might be. So actually, independent stats being produced well, that's also an important point to bring up, is also really effective, because what it does is it holds up a mirror. And so when Games Workshop are like, no, everything's fine, you're like, no, that's not true. Like, here's the information. Like, there's a lot of really good community conversation stuff to happen around this, which I think is really healthy, which I think is good, and I love it. And I also think it's just really good for community. Last thing, it also, if you are involved in it and do enjoy it, it creates, and I don't think it overly robs, like if a couple of numbers on screen rob you of your majesty of gaming, I feel like you're a tender heart, and you should maybe be a little bit, like, there's a lot of numbers also in your book, so good luck with the math on that. But the goal here is to make sure that you are well informed and you have a lot of info, but also maybe to make Games Workshop course correct on some elements, because when the community are talking about it, when luckily there's lots of you who watch us, not as many of you watch us for the lore shows, mad at you for that. Okay, go watch that video.
I blame the algorithm. Speaking of numbers and statistics, because as not only a co-host of the show, but a gross person who watches every show, the lore show was not recommended to me, Rob. So perhaps we should have a link in the didgeridoo if you want to catch up on the exciting lore of Cathay instead of this episode about
if you're
stats.
Incredibly excited about supply lines, then go watch it. Okay.
You might have missed our scintillating last episode.
So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this in and start talking about some of the stats. Now, I did mention a moment ago about stats being done well. So Val did the 40k stat show for about a couple of years, I'm going to say.
It was the pandemic killed. I think we were a year and a half actually when it was all said and done. It wasn't that long. It was a glorious fast run. We burned out, not faded away.
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough that me and Rob have been doing this for a long time. So there's been a lot of like iteration on how we do stats, why we do stats. So I want to be really clear about that, because I think there are stats in other locations, and I think those don't necessarily present really good information. I'm going to start out also by saying two things, because data nerds are going to come at me, and I love that. It's my favorite. Number one, there isn't enough data here for these to be true representations of what's going on. That's important. But number two, you would hope people who do this professionally would start to bring in some good and sensible analytical review of the data. So the data is more of like a guidance on having a conversation. That's really important. And so, but I know for a fact that, and we've even removed like armies that have only got like 2 or 3 examples inside of them from the stats, because people will see something that says 80% and that's all their brain will be able to focus on because they're stupid. So like, and that includes me. So you have to take that out and just be like, right, here's some good presentation. So we do have some methodology. So the first and probably most important methodology that might be different to other stuff that's out there is that, and again, I also don't have any idea what other stats are out there. I literally don't care. Unless Rob does my stats for me, I don't care what anyone does. No offense to anyone. Maybe there's someone out there who's done way better stuff. So congratulations to you. I hope it's going really well. You're the best. But we only do 5 game events, right? So these don't necessarily have to be across 2 days. I've seen AOS, we have these things called Iron Man. 5 games in a day. But we always
want to do one. Have you ever done an Iron Man?
Absolutely not.
I always want to do one.
I think I could do one.
Idea.
I think I could do one. So 5 game events. Now the reason for that is that actually I think there's a lot of statistical noise that occurs between games 1, 2, and 3. And really you start getting the players and the armies that get paired against each other around, round 3, 4, and 5, obviously 3 being that point. And so one-day events actually incredibly muddy the waters, where I think it's actually less useful. It actually worsens what I think the trends are showing versus like informs. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, to really hammer that home. So like in a 3-game event, even if it's assuming you've got, I don't know, 10 or 12 more people, there's a chance that the best factions there have not matched up. That it's very possible that just based on the way the pairings go, that you never actually wind up facing something that can counter your army, and so you can go 3-0. You can really max your score. When you start to get into the 5 rounds or more events, and this I assume would be 5 rounds or more. I don't know how many.
Yeah, 5 rounds. 5 rounds or more.
So like once you get into those type of numbers, then as Rob was saying, once you get into that round 4 and 5 rounds of a tournament, that's where you generally will see wheat separated from chaff. So that's where the best armies are 100% matched up against others. The sort of the 4-0 mark tends to be like 4 consecutive wins. That would generally be an army that actually is in position, or a faction or a player is in position to win an event. That's why the 5 rounds are best for really understanding how an army is performing. For example, I can win an RTT. I have never won my 4th game in a tournament. So that's my glass ceiling. I've never actually won that 4th game in a tournament because it's always the best opposite. There's nowhere to hide once you get to sort of that 3-0 level and then play the 4th game, which is great. I've had a lot of fun games at 3-0 and then losing them. But that's where you're playing against the best competition at the event. So those rounds 4 and 5 really, really are important for understanding truly what armies have the potential to perform extremely well.
Yeah, also armies can spike, right? Especially Old World. Old World's got more variance than a lot of the other game systems nowadays produced by Games Workshop. So actually, to think of Skaven, although we will be talking about Skaven in a moment, Skaven, they might do a maniacal thing a third of the time, and for 3 games they might do it all 3 times, but they won't successfully do it for 5 times. Also, another point,
more of an 8th edition mentality of what Skaven could do.
No one knows, based on the meta representation, no one knows what Skaven currently do, right?
Yeah,
So I was getting the member berries out. And lastly, you end up with a change also in what happens based on how many players, how large an event is. So when we're talking about 5-round events specifically, so if you have a 100-person event, then actually the rounds 4 and 5 are actually softer than they are in because you have a higher chance that just a couple of noobs smash each other, and you end up with a softer 4-5 than you would get at a 30-person GT or something smaller, or a bunch of local real good players, and they all turn up together, and then maybe every game could be really hard. So the size of an event doesn't justify it being a harder event or a more difficult event. And actually, when we look at the meta representation for armies in a moment, that kind of backs up that methodology, in the more people who play an army, generally their win rate is lower than you would expect it to be, because generally you have the percentage of people who have good skill expression actually is very small. So, and it gets smaller and smaller in large meta reps.
Yeah, I think one way to look at it is if you take a scoop of a group of people who are playing Warhammer, there will always be, 10 or 20% of that number are going to be your good, the people who are trying hard at the game, specifically at the game, or have worked hard to develop the skills to be good at the game.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and then there's sort of everybody else, and everybody else, they can go on a heater, they can go on a good run, but ultimately they will play someone who probably outclasses them. and or what have you. I think at large events, that scoop, round 4 is still going to be your yes, there's still a chance in round 4 you meet a player who might be of more average skill because there's just more players who could possibly be at 3-0. But there's still likely that roughly the Pareto curve of players, like 20% of them are going to be the good ones,
well,
or the ones who could potentially win the event. Yeah.
Sure. So, and agreed, 100%. So just taking a look at this first graphic that we've got here, we can see that since the match play guide came out, these are all the events that we could find. So if you do have a link to others, or if your country, for instance, France loves Tawny Keeper, as an example, if your country is using some sort of other weird tracking system, we've got results taken from spreadsheets. Yeah, sure. These are results taken from 5 different countries. So we record events from 3 different websites so far: BCP, New Recruit, Old World, and Rankings. That's up to 9 different types of website in AOS, to give you some sort of example. Go on.
If I could interject very quickly, because we don't shout them out enough. Old World Rankings is done by a fellow named Gamo. It was created, I think, to run the Australian Masters. And 1, it's a really great way to find events that are coming up. 2, although they don't do so, like this, the data that you're going to see here is actually like viewed by a person, and the beans are counted and vetted. So like that's what's important about the difference here. But Old World Rankings aggregates, just scoops up all the sort of results from every event that can be found, I think, on just about any meaningful tournament platform. So Old World Rankings would allow for things that aren't on New Recruit and BCP to get into this data, which is great. But it's also got a lot of great visualizations and things like that. And it's a really fun website to play around with. So Old World Rankings, I'm glad they got a shout out on our show. They've deserved one for a while.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's where some of this information has come from, although curated very specifically, like by a person. Okay, and then 19 events so far for this match play. Now, what's really fun, and because me and Rob have made a commitment to try and do this for as long as we can, like to produce these so we can chat about it. The best bits about these are years on years. So for example, like what we've generally seen in Age of Sigmar is we've seen events trend away from larger scale events, but having more smaller events more often. So while we've seen the player base not change, what we've seen is the event size generally on average become smaller, but become more disparate. Right, and we've seen like other communities, and we have like communities now in Peru and China and all over Serbia, all over the place, right? So that's really exciting, which is different here because we have 378 players playing in 2-day events. Now, obviously, think about how many 1-day events there also might be, and also think about how many like local club games and other stuff there might be. That's probably much more tournament players than you would think. But from this
is also the timing of it is. Have we talked about the timing? Like
Yeah, so you're right. It's from when the match play guide came out. So it's from the 5th of the 7th. So the 5th of June. It's sent till now, till literally this weekend just gone.
Okay, so this is May through now.
May through now, yes. So 5th of May,
cool.
5th of May
till...
till...
A bit before the MPG, but yeah, cool.
Oh, no. This is only match play guide events. So unless we're doing that American way around, this is only match play guide events, nothing else. July is the 7th month. Thank you very much, Rob. Both me and Val couldn't work that out. It's from the 5th of July.
Okay.
5th of July until literally this weekend just gone. So that's the period of time. And then 378 different players with 1,000+ games on record. But I think the important thing to look at here is the heat map. I got asked this question by Rob. Is Old World an English-speaking game?
Well, I learned this in 40K stats that it's might be English-speaking data collectors skewing things a little bit, because that does limit things. For example, we discovered that the largest team event in the world actually took place in Spain, like 2 years after we started, in those days anyway. I think the fact that it skews English-speaking world does not surprise me. This is Warhammer in general is very much a Commonwealth thing that happens, and a lot of those are going to be English-speaking countries. And then these markets that you have here, UK, North America, and Australia, those are also, and I assume there's got to be some European events that snuck in here too. Those are the places where Warhammer players are. So this doesn't surprise me at all.
That was good. And also, it's worth noting to everyone who's watching this, if you're like, no, there's this website and we all use it in Germany, or there's this website we all use in France, we can only know about those if you let us know. So if you let us know, we'll add it to our list, and we will try to expand upon this, of course. And this is why I'm saying this happened in AOS. We ended up we're on 19 different tournament softwares now.
Oh, wow!
That's what 19 that we're up to, which is pretty crazy. Or 19, one of the two. It's a lot of different websites, and also we've been able to track the number. How popular they've become as well, because interestingly, Best Coast Pairings has become less popular over the past couple of years for Age of Sigmar, as an example. So, lots to learn from, and lots to. The German one is called T3. Someone has linked in the chat something called ChampionsHub.app. We're all learning in real time. There are other locations. So, this is why the stats. This is why a stat show is so important, because it brings us together as a community, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, if we put the beacon out for like where are these stats, then that opens up the opportunity for us to aggregate them, for Old World Rankings to start hoovering that stuff up systematically as they do. So yeah, like please do let us know if you guys have a vibrant playing scene, and 100% the Poles are playing the hell out of this game. I'm sure. I know the Spanish are. Germans are. That's just off the top of my head. There are definitely people I've seen.
Portugal.
That's just Europe. In Asia, there are people playing that I get messages from. Mexico, I know. There's a excited group in Mexico. I don't know if they're getting into 5-day events yet, but like there's people around the world. Sorry, 2-day events. Sorry,
yeah.
Not 5-day events. Maybe in siesta culture.
Yeah, maybe.
Instead of taking instead of getting away from the heat, you play a game of Warhammer. I don't know.
Well, that's a big North American. That's a big North American thing, isn't it? Having at least 3-day events, because everyone's traveling and stuff is a thing that's popular.
Yeah, 3-day events would be like your convention events. Like so the ones that are big tent poles and have vendors and things like that. That would be like Adepticon Nova just passed. Would be a 3-day. Las Vegas Open coming up in October would be a 3-day. Green Banner events, which I'm going to LA to help run and participate in at the Cali Cup. We'll see, Rob. That'd be fun. The Cali Cup takes place over 3 days, but for us on the Friday, we're just going to do something fun. So yeah, there's lots of events like that too. I don't know how often it happens in the UK.
Okay, sorry, I'm just laughing. People send in Rob, the stats man, in the chat links, and he's like, "Has this website been updated since 1994?" Okay, anyway, right. Let's just focus on a couple of the numbers. Nearly 400 players attending 2-day or 5-game or 5 or more game events.
Can I do one PSA? Can I do one PSA? So here's a really important thing, folks. If you are running events, or if you're going to events, don't just encourage like really drive and force people to upload their lists to the event. Most platforms have this ability, but like not just the faction, have the actual list on there. Because again, that allows people like Warhammer Rob, not this Warhammer Rob, the other Warhammer Rob.
Warhammer Rob. That's what we call him.
Better Warhammer Rob. That allows those people to see, okay, this says that it's Cathay, but was it? It allows people to see, and then later on we can do fun stuff with that information. It's an incredibly important part of the knowledge share. It's not part of the culture of ancient Warhammer fantasy scenes because we didn't really have the technology for sharing lists, and also a lot of the times people hid their lists. So uploading your lists to these platforms is critical. It also allows someone like myself to be able to filter out renegade events. so I can see how renegades are performing. So that's really important for me. So I can see relative to the legacy factions, are renegade events bringing more legacy players to the table. We can see how successful we're being with that. So really, really stressing. I wish that I should have said this off the top. Please, if you're going to an event, encourage the TO to force people to put their lists on there, because you're not just playing your event in your own little local community. You're part of a very big global community. People are watching. They're interested in knowing what people are playing, and it's definitely something that we got to be mindful of and get into the culture of playing in events to upload your lists where people can see them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to get into some numbers, there are 400 people ish playing 5-game events, which is very exciting. Now, obviously, this number is dwarfed by things like 40K and Age of Sigmar. But like that's because I think we're in a transitional stage of getting a lot of people to go from local clubs and getting them out at events, playing, learning, like, and enjoying events. You know, the old world, I think, still has very much some of them holdovers of like the that guy culture. That's generally not what Warhammer events are like. Plus, also, it's fair to say the meta was a bit rocky pre the match play guide. And while when we see this in a moment, there is definitely some armies that are overperforming. I think it's worth noting that you know, most of your games are still going to be very, very fun, and you're going to have a very good shot at having a go at winning some games. So go out there, play. So I think that's pretty fun. And also, this has been, you know, in the past 3 months since the match play guide came out, and I think that this is 19 events. That's pretty good compared to where we were at the start of the edition, obviously. So, you know, just run some events, get some people out there playing, or go out there and play yourself, obviously. So that's worth looking at. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at, actual numbers-wise, is we're going to look at what's called the meta rep. So this is how often armies are played at events. There's a couple of things that initially skew this already. Number one is that if you're going to an event, you're probably going to try and take the army that you think might do well. Now, Old World, on my personal experience, as the person who's run the most Old World events in the world, is that most people are taking armies they want to play. This is not the same, like, this is the army I must play to do well that we maybe see in 40K. And instead, it very much is like, these are the armies I want to play. These are the armies that I really like. These are things that are really cool. And also, like me and Val have covered, and Val has pointed out time and time again, and I think it's really important, the model availability is also very different in Old World compared to other game systems. So some armies, it's more difficult to play. So this is the meta rep. And obviously all things are not going to be equal, because A, some armies might be good, but also some armies are just cooler than other armies.
Wow, hold on a second, Rob. We're looking at cold, hard facts here, not subjective opinions like that.
Well, we can, bud, because your army that you love, the City State of Nuln, is the least popular. And my army, the Warriors of Chaos, is the most popular. So,
well, let's look at some results in a minute. But the other thing I want to just spell out here for folks is, because I was confused by this shorthand too. Meta rep is cool guy shorthand for meta representation. So how often these factions are represented what percentage of all the armies played each one of these forms. So that's meta rep, because it's not just what people think about these things.
No,
the representation.
The other note that I always throw into meta representation, because this is going to inform everything we look at next, is I'm of the belief that there isn't actually that many good Warhammer players, and that's an okay thing to say. Right? Most people don't.
Absolute truth.
Most people don't want to be a good Warhammer player. They just want to play with their army and have some games, which is why the final slide, the positive win rate potential, is hopefully the most useful of the stats that we produce. That said, that means that if you were to have 202 people playing Warriors of Chaos, I reckon about 5 of them will be any good, right? And my love to everyone who plays that army. I'm not in the 5. I'm with you lot in the not in the 5, right? As an example, right? What this generally means, in my opinion, especially with Old World, because Old World is a new game, people are still learning. Think about how often you've played at an event, or if you've even played at all. How many times do you really play? Developing the skill expression to be really good at a game takes a lot of practice and time. And with a game only being out a year and a half, or a little over a year and a half, right? Like, you maybe not have, if you went to an event every quarter, which most people would think is a lot, you've played at 6 events. You know, that's 30 games. It's not necessarily tons and tons of repetition to say that you're like super up there. So I want to be really clear that like I think it's that Warhammer takes at ages. It's really difficult to do. Everyone is busy. So I'm not trying to be critical of people. I'm trying to just really explain what I see. What this means though is Warriors of Chaos likely will have a lower win rate than they should have when we look at the win rate stuff. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, and just I want to do a slight correction so we don't get completely blown up. The number in brackets there would be games played, not players, because it's 389 players.
Yeah, games played, sorry.
That's okay. I think one thing, too, about this is I feel like something folks need to be really cool with is that Warhammer is hard. Right. And so I think there's a couple of ways you can go with Warhammer is hard. One is to say Warhammer is hard, and therefore the people who get good at it, you know, maybe they got more time than I do or whatever to like get good at it and learn how to play the game. Or it's to say that the good players only use OP armies. The good players just roll their dice better. You know, basically the mentality of if I lose at Warhammer, it's your fault. And that to me is just not a great mindset for anything in life. And what's better to be is humble. And I think that's what's better to be is humble and to know where you are, you know, at skill level, have your own personal, this will tell you roughly what's going on in the world. And I think what the biggest value it has for me is for setting reasonable expectations. I'm a Skaven player, let's say, and I go out there, I get my little tail handed to me every single time, and I am mad at everything. Or I go out there and I realize that because I love Skaven and refuse to play anything else because I'm an OG Skaven player, and that's what I want to do, I can now set a reasonable expectation and feel amazing if I get 2 wins.
Yes.
You know, like I can say if I go out there and I spoil a couple of games and I pull off a win, that is like as good as going 5-0 with Warriors of Chaos or Vampire Counts or whatever, because it allows you to set reasonable expectations and not just be and hopefully will give something for you to not be bitter about if you're not having a good time. Setting reasonable expectations for me is one of the best things about stats.
Absolutely correct. There's also two other. There's also absolutely correct. There's also 2 other points that are worth mentioning in this kind of like evolving story. Is number one, while an army like Warriors of Chaos that have a high meta representation, they'll probably have a lower win rate and a lower PWRP, which we'll talk about in a bit. But likely they'll still be able to do very well at events. So that's something to be conscious of. Now there's an inverse to this. In an army that has a very high or medium to high meta representation, which is what we're going to see from Cathay, but their win rate is also high, this is a problem because this is most covered in what we call the PWRP. But what happens there, like, because that's a kind of like cross between the two, because what happens there is it's really the army that's carrying everybody versus the players, right? So if you end up in that situation, which we are in at the moment, then, you know, not to blow the lead, then that becomes a bit of an issue as well. The final point to point out, and I know, Val, this is a big issue, not big issue for you, but something you were quite like amazed by, is you have something that we call the production meta. So James, there's a guy called James in the chat, Exiles Painting. Go check him out on Instagram. So James has been working diligently to produce like a nomadic war army that he's played several times at the TSN. It's like multiple like chariots. And every time I see him, like, there can't possibly be more chariots you need for the army. But he keeps getting like 15, 20 million like chariots, right? Or Kev, who's been putting million giants rats together or whatever it might be. Actually producing some of these armies is a big investment in time. And yes, the game's been out a year and a half, but actually the Empire Arcane Journal's only been out for 7 months. You know?
Yeah.
has that been enough time for people to put their models together? The point with Cathay, which I think we should talk about now, because it's on 4% of the meta, as Val will point out, is taking up 4% of the meta in the 2 or 3 months it's been released.
It's pretty impressive.
It's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive. So that speaks to the popularity of having a sick new faction, and we'll see. We'll see. Maybe one day we'll do a drill down and see if there's a correlation between the winning lists and balloons. I don't know, but yeah, that's really, really impressive. Also, just as a general statement, what's really impressive to me is that every faction is represented here. So with only this 1,000+ games, 389 players, we have seen every single army get play. There's only a handful of sub-factions that don't make an appearance in these stats, which shockingly does include Nomadic Wa and Troll Hordes, which says to me that's probably more of a collection, like data collection thing, or maybe they didn't have enough games.
They didn't have enough games. So it actually says here, results do not include factions with less than 15 games played. So we took those out. So yeah, Nomadic Wa I think is missing.
Bit of a shocker to me, because those two in particular seem like decent lists for playing at a competitive level. Not a shocker to me, the Wood Elf armies of infamy making 0 appearances, because at least we're probably still trying to figure out how those guys factor in. Host of Taliesin might be useful with all the special features out there. Who knows?
Who knows? So yeah, we've not included those. We have also subdivided the armies out into whatever their sub-factions might be, armies of infamy as an example, because actually I think that's really healthy. I think that's really good, because what we used to do very detailed stats for AOS, where we used to look at like the win rates for each sub-faction in an AOS as an example. There used to be like sometimes 7 or 8 sub-factions, so it'd be something that was pretty relevant. So we we don't do that anymore because they're not as important, and there's normally just a good one that gets taken. But breaking these out, I think, has been quite interesting as well, because you've definitely got some differentiation between them. Right, should we talk about what's actually in here? So at the top of the pile, I think this is an amazing story. Warriors of Chaos. Models are easily available, an early arcane journal, the default bad guys in any of the stories. Brilliant range, loads of models.
A starter army, according to us.
Starting army, exactly. But then Legends in number 2. So, and a Legends army that you really like. How do you feel about
that? I feel like it just gives even more credibility to the shock that vampire counts aren't a core army. And I love this. I love that people are refusing not to play it. Refusing not to play. I don't know how many double negatives. Anyway, confused. Regardless, it is great to see one of the legacy factions up there. Of course, this is probably due to the fact that they've got really good rules in that legacy list. So Renegade or not, it's just a great foundation, and it's got a deep catalog of minis. It does not surprise me at all that, because it's both good and you can build it out of AOS models if you really wanted new stuff. You definitely can find it because it's a super popular army on secondhand. There's tons of ways to get a vampire counts going, and because they're good, there's extra motivation to actually commit and build that army. I'm surprised it's that high, to be honest.
Yeah, almost double.
Not surprised that it's up there.
Almost double launch army Tomb Kings is a wild number. And again, like we said earlier, what you'll see, this does not mean that vampire counts are more popular than Tomb Kings as an army, bought and printed and painted and whatever it might be. But for events, and you're going to take strong stuff to events for sure. But still, Tomb Kings feel like they would be quite good. Empire and Man is the one to me that is really interesting, because I think Empire is an incredibly challenging army to play. New match play guide, a massive improvement to how they play.
Especially,
super effective, really good. Not surprised to see them in there for a bunch of different reasons. But I am surprised because also they've been a hard army to play and do well with over the past year and a half. So I think if we had collected these stats a year ago, I think Empire Man would have been a lot lower. I think that's a bit of a success story.
Empire is definitely the Skaven of core armies, I feel like, in the sense that it's just very, very popular. People They want to play with their dudes with huge cod pieces. I get it. No shame in that, and finding ways to make that happen is great.
Yeah, just painting while they watch Blackadder on repeat. Absolutely okay.
I do want to say something about Tomb Kings versus Vampire counts there. Tomb Kings, of course, is split into 3 different things. So you got More Cult, Tomb Kings, and Royal Clan. I think they would edge Vampire counts if you combine those guys into their one faction.
That's a great point. That's a really good point, actually. And one that shocks me: High Elf Realms. What are you doing, guys?
That's impressive.
They were incredibly popular in 8th edition, though, right? So maybe it's a holdover from that. As I've said, I don't think people are necessarily playing armies they think they can win. They're playing armies that they want to win with. Very different methodology, which I think is fun. I'm surprised dwarves, although, like you said, they are broken up. Dwarven Mountain Holds is 4% of the meta. Then Royal Clan is 3%, and Expeditionary Force is 3%. So actually, if you combine all the dwarfs together, it's 10%. That puts them up there at the top. Although Warriors, you can add Heralds to Darkness too, and Wolves of the Sea, so they kind of pip it a little bit. But it puts them up there as popular. Not surprising. Dwarfs are pretty popular.
Yeah, not surprising. Actually, going all the way back to our great Warhammer: The Old World survey, essentially all of the Tolkien factions are by far the most popular favorite factions, and then plus vampire counts. So anything that's elves, anything that's dwarves, anything that's orcs and goblins, humans, those things are just going to be the most popular. So I again, not super surprised to see that. And then and of course, as we know, there's a lot of saucy little freaks out there who just love their dwarves. So it's great.
And then I think the last thing to say, unsurprisingly, we see a lot of the Renegade factions in the lower meta representation. Chaos Wolves, Demons of Chaos, Skaven, all on that lower end. Not many people taking City State Unknown or Heralds of Darkness. I'm going to come back to City State Unknown in a bit when we look at win rates. I think it's worth talking about. Ogres also down there as well. So pretty much, if you're a Renegade, you're not being played loads, unfortunately.
Still though, not gone, right? Like they're not in the numbers. Like correct. I'm impressed to see 41 games played by Demons of Chaos, for example. That's awesome. Even Dark Elves, Lizardmen, they're all sitting around a similar amount of games played, which means people are still pulling them out, still getting some games in with them, which is great, which is where we want. They need to be present, and they are definitely present.
Absolutely.
Odds are you're running into a core army if you go to an event, but you're probably also going to see at least a Renegade faction, which is great. We want to see that continue to happen.
So keep these numbers in mind as we go to what will be the most screenshotted part of the video, the win rate for the new Arcane Journal. So, so when we do the stats arbitrarily, years ago, we decided to just try and bully Games Workshop into trying to make armies between 45 and 55% win rates. Actually, there's some really good, there are loads of sports you can look at. And esports, as an example, where actually between 45 and 55 would actually be considered an egregious range.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So the 45 to 55% win rate is just a range that we just decided years and years ago. And then obviously you have below and above and what we call the fat middle. Although looking like a pretty normal middle. I think let's start with the elephant in the room in Grand Cathay up the top. 88 games played. Yeah, by the way, these results do not include draws. That's important to talk about. And factions with less than 15% games, with less than 15 games played are not there either. So 67%. This is what I would describe as being in the yikes category of numbers. Now there is a little caveat to this. We did see a couple of early games played by playtester who also had early access to models. Actually reduces that number down by 5%. Like you're talking about launch weekend. No, the week after launch weekend, we got a 5-0, and then 2 weeks later another 5-0 from someone who had advanced knowledge and also ages to produce the models before anyone else. Personally, think that's not very healthy for the game. I think that's a fair thing to say, because obviously now what's actually happened is that individual has increased that from what is already an egregious 62%
Yeah.
to 67%. But I just wanted to highlight that because I think that really informed a lot of early stats that maybe came out from other locations and other people and started and added a lot of fuel to a fire that occurred, early on.
I think, though, part of that is, I mean, there is a shadow realm out there, too, which is online games. And the fact that, there are players out there who rep this game hard. Unfortunately, a lot of them, thinking of Poland here, probably don't speak English. So we don't get to see what they're saying, or at least aren't publishing stuff in English. But I think with Cathay, yeah, sure. Maybe some folks with early access had early results, but I mean the sum of this too does strongly suggest that there are elements of Grand Cathay that are overtuned.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with 4% meta rep, like
4% meta representation.
That adds to it for sure.
Right. To be able to, that means that all the players who picked it up, and by the way, not everyone who picked up Cathay was just someone who wanted to go, crush dreams. A lot of people picked up Cathay because they thought it was cool, and that's why that's why I'm bummed that they might get this reputation for being a way OP army, because that makes people who are excited to play Old World feel bad about playing Old World, and that sucks. And that's why to me this is a Games Workshop. If you're listening. This is a problem. It doesn't mean that we have to make Grand Cathay awful. I like it better when things have good rules. But if things are overcooked, it can take what were probably your net new players who maybe never played Old World, maybe never played Fantasy, were excited, and now they have a lunchbox letdown because their friends don't want to play with them because their army has this awful reputation. Reference things like High Elves and other armies from previous editions that still have like this OP stigma on them, right? So like it's not good when an army is way too overcooked, and it's particularly awful when it's something as exciting as Cathay should have been, and really the buzz rapidly dissolves into this army's stupid, and that sucks.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out as well that obviously with Cathay only being a very recent release, a lot of the early adopters. So one of the things that I tend to find in Age of Sigmar stats is actually if you give it a little bit of time, is actually win rates generally tend to spike initially when a book or an army comes out, and then you see a slow tapering off. Now, that's before normally Games Workshop gets involved, although sometimes it can be after they've got involved. But that generally tends to be a trend because the early adopters or people who are very involved in playing the game, very excited, and play tournaments, which all this data is based on, normally will put this stuff together. Well, for instance, very, very locally in England, we saw some absolute dog shit speed painted balloon army, like being pushed around on some tables and I think getting a 4-1. So you do end up with, I think there's a lot of people here who, like a lot of these Cathay reps, are not necessarily your hobbyist who will play it in 6 months to a year's time. So don't be too stressed. Like if you are currently building it and painting it, I think your army's fine. Like will be fine by the time you get around to putting it on the tabletop, which is good. But now that's not the only horror show here, though. Like anything above 55 is bad. And Bretonian Exiles, sir,
still great. Turns out still good. Turns out increasing Pegasus Knights by 2 points doesn't do a lot for you. Still good. Turns out they're still good. Turns out they have some of the best core brick infantry available in the game. They have the best cannon. So yeah, they're going to do good. What was the Exile specific meta representation as well?
Very low. And actually, there's a really good story to talk about with City Status and Nuln and Bretonian Exiles and Warriors of Chaos. So let's just go and remind ourselves. So the Exiles list that we saw was 3% of the meta. So less than Cathay, more than Royal Clan. But importantly, 3 times as many as the City State and Nuln, and a third as much as Warriors of Chaos. So what's good here, or what we can really see, is this is, again, like high-end picks. What I mean by that is you often tend to find armies with really low meta representation, Exiles, lower, Yeah, but City State and Nuln, very low, 1% of the meta. You generally tend to find it's a person or a couple of players that are skewing that number massively. For instance, with City State and Nuln, definitely Jack Allen is a good example of someone who is one of the few people who plays them and plays them very, very well. And so, yeah, that low meta rep but high win rate really showcases it's a player or it's a very small player base who really understand how to play an army well.
Yeah. And then the other part of it, too, is just with such a small sample, they could have gone on a heater. They could have, like we talked about, like you can't, especially something that's using a lot of artillery dice and cannons.
True.
But I just would have had a good hot hand in a dice game, baby.
Oh, 5 times, let's go.
So like those are all possible outcomes with such a small sample. I would say, though, City State of Nuln, as a guy who's been noodling on City State lists since that book came out, looks spicy if you lean into it. So yeah, maybe I'll finally start doing some hobby and get all the models built I need for it. But yeah, so it's cool. It's cool to see on Empire list doing well up there.
Absolutely. Now, I'd also just like to revisit. We definitely, and whenever you're discussing Cathay needing some adjustment, you also need to discuss Bretonnian Exiles needing an adjustment. They are in the absolutely cooked category. We could even give these a different color. They're in their own league, which is unnecessary.
I think the one actually here that shouts out to me, genuinely cooked, would be Vampire Counts, because they have double or triple or more than that amount of games played, and they're at the top end of that 55% win rate.
You're absolutely right.
So that means that that is going to include players who are not optimizing. That includes players who are just running their favorite models, and they're still winning more than half their games. If there's probably 2 cooked armies in this current meta to me, and they are VCs and Cathay.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And I think it's worth actually pointing out a couple of those armies. If we take a look at Vampire Counts, which were the second most popular army, they're at 55. Then now if we go to the most popular army played, Warriors of Chaos, they're at 42. That really gives you some indication that about the same amount of people are playing it, but there is a 13% difference in the win rate potential, or not in the win rate potential, but like the win rates that we've currently seen posted between the two. And that's really informative, like Val says, because really you would expect to have roughly the same skill equivalents across the same number of people, well, same number of games. But actually, now that could also just be because my friend Leith plays Warriors of Chaos, and he's just trying to lower the rate as low as possible.
Yeah, Rob also plays Warriors of Chaos.
That's true. That's true. And it could also just be because Vampire Counts players are better. Who knows?
Shout out Ogre Kingdoms OP as well.
Yeah, Ogre Kingdoms low meta rep, and I think that's one of the funny stories there. Low meta rep, doing well. Tomb Kings also, they're not being played lots, but when they're being played, they're doing really, really well.
And that's just the Grand Army Tomb Kings with 102 entrants there. But more cults, right on the number. I guess if you included, and then Royal Clan, I don't think made the cut. Oh no, they did. They're down there at 74. So yeah, I think if you include them all as a group, then yeah, they're definitely overtuned. I would say Tomb Kings of Khemri and Vampire Counts together are both undead. They both benefit from very similar skewing rules, and that's probably why you see both of them sort of in that sort of high representation, high win rate.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the other standout armies where you get played a lot is Beastmen Brayheads, 142 players. They're around a 50% mark. Could be statement Beastmen literally perfect. That's important. Yeah, and we need to remember as well that lots of draws, around 12% of games are draws, which is interestingly 10 times more draws than you see in Age of Sigmar.
That is interesting.
That's because the variance for scoring is very different. But AOS and 40k have become almost singular in the ability to produce a winner. It's very, very hard to achieve draws in either of those two game systems now. Whereas with Old World, it is a game much more likely to produce straws, which is interesting. In fact, actually, maybe a stat we could get in the future is the army with the most straws, because that would be fascinating. Sit in a corner, just get a 10-10. Very funny.
I would wager that the majority of these games are played using a differential scoring system. So therefore, if you don't outscore your opponent in victory points by at least a certain margin, it results in a draw. If you were just straight victory points, like, the score would, be 1,205 to 1,000, that wouldn't be a draw. I think a lot of the additional draws has to do with that differential, and that you don't necessarily see differential used in singles as much in AOS and 40K as you once did. But that's because they have very different systems for their missions and how you actually win the game.
Now, it's worth pointing out that we've obviously talked about the highlight, and people will always talk about the highlights, like the armies that are doing too well. But it's also worth focusing on the armies that need help. An army that definitely comes up short is dwarfs. Their Royal Clan, 45%. Two of their others, Dwarven Mountain Holds and Expeditionary Force, are below the 45% mark. So dwarves, I think, are close to statistically one of the worst performing armies here. Warriors of Chaos have some sub-factions that can do a little bit better, like Wolves of the Sea, we can see is higher. But there's not really anything that's popping up from these, which I think is good. Now, someone's pointed out in the chat, we'll talk about solutions later, bringing armies up. But while capping the top armies, it's also worth pointing out the armies that need help. Skaven, we can see here clearly very much struggling. And we all anecdotally know Skaven struggle, but we know now that they are the army holding the rest of the game on their shoulders. That's what they're doing.
Their little beady eyes are darting back and forth. They're desperate. They're cornered rats.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, this is not a surprise. And anyone who's trying to make a Skaven army probably isn't surprised. It's one of the armies in Renegades that I've been gathering as the biggest treasure trove of feedback on that I can possibly amass. Because they are in a real tough spot to have fun with. And ultimately, winning does not equal fun, but being competitive, i.e. the chance to win, the chance to participate in the game, does equal fun. And Skaven might be one of those that aren't necessarily in that. I would say that, losing with dwarves is probably, and orcs and goblins, which is also sort of in that lower tier of high representation and lower win rate, or losing with Warriors of Chaos, a lot more fun than losing with Skaven.
So I'm really glad you brought Orc and Goblin tribes, actually, because this is one of the factions that is least data driven. You brought up an army that's got a lot of games played, 148 games, by Orcs and Goblins, super popular army, meta rep really high, and their win rate is trending towards low. The problem we have here, and this is really only something that the Warhammer Wargaming players can understand, is that Orcs and Goblins players are mental. So you can build really good Orc and Goblin armies that I think can go 4-1-5-0, but you can also not.
We've seen it.
Yeah, we've seen it, and you can also not. And they generally tend to listen. If you are attracted to the maniacal faction, I'm not sure your head's screwed on for a focused 5 rounds, maybe not even 2.
Or you're like that person that I described that doesn't want to know the odds. They're the Han Solos of Warhammer are definitely involved in Orcs and Goblins. They want to get in a fight. They want to go crump. They want to perhaps tastefully, I hope, people get a few waws out. So, but I think we see this with Orcs and Goblins across all factions. They tend to be players who are genuinely
all games.
All Warhammer games. Orc and Goblin players will often have just stonking rules. They'll have at their disposal the plans for the Death Star, the thing that is very, very good, and they'll be like, "But these are my boys."
yeah, they're like, right, okay, so hold the objective. That's what I do. Yes, I'm going to charge. You're like, okay, no.
So maybe we're prejudicing a bit against Orc and Goblin players, but that's why I don't think anyone's like, I'm playing Orcs and Goblins. When they're at an event, it's always a party. It's always a good time. unless you're playing me, in which case I'm probably crying, sweating every dice spike, just emotional mess, because I just do not have the correct mindset for orcs and goblins, because
yeah. Listen, another big army. We did talk about Empire of Man being super popular, 47%. I think that is a match play guide win. They're an army that just do better in the new match play guide. Similarly, High Elf Realms, high meta rep, and they're in that kind of mid tier. They're in a safe place. So hopefully that's put some people on the back burner. So I just want to be conscious of time. So let us know what your thoughts are and experiences with these armies are in the comments below. Now our last table is one that needs a bit of. So I want to make sure we hit the time.
Yeah, help me get this, because this is some sick bar charts. So let's go.
Okay, so this is a stat that we came up with a while ago, because effectively when people look at the win rates, they just screen cap the biggest one. They're like, that army is good, and that's not necessarily 100% true. It often is, but really, I think what a lot of people want when they say, I'd like to get into playing the old world, I like to play war games, I'd like an army that's fair but can do okay. Right? That's what I think most people want. Most people generally tend to, I know people who are like, no, I'm not going to play with the army that's a little bit overcooked at the minute. Or what's a good army to play at the club with my friends? Well, how can I use tournament data to just affect the casual club games I'm going to play, because I'm never going to go to a tournament? That's the positive win rate potential. What it basically does is it takes all of the information from the games that we've got, and it tells you how many times an army won more games than it lost. Going 3-2. Now, this isn't a stat I really see anyone else really do, because if you walk away from a weekend having won more games than you lost, I think you're over the moon. I think you're like, that's a good weekend, right? And so here, this is the stats. And there's a couple of charts. Importantly, anything over 50% is in blue. In the yellow section, it also shows you how many 4+ wins they've got. This is in reference to another stat that we normally use also in AOS, but specifically started thanks to Val and Peter in 40K, called the T-Whip, which we don't have enough data for at the moment, but that's what the yellow bar is meant to also help impress you with. Because not only did Cathay, as an example, have the second highest positive win rate potential, so won more games than it lost, it also has the highest amount of 4+ wins. Yeah. So that means that not only do you go 3-2, you often go 4-1 with Cathay over what's a high number there? Vampire counts. Vampire counts just have a straight 50-50 positive win rate potential. And they actually don't have any, I mean, they've got maybe a third of the 4+ that you see coming out of Cathay. And then Tomb Kings as the last one, just to bring that up, again, a lot of 4+ wins, and they generally win about as many games as they lose, which is a nice kind of place for them to be. But they win a lot of 4-1s, so they normally fall down. They might lose the first game actually, and then kind of sub. But that's what this chart is meant to be. So if you were going to go to the shop and buy an army, and you're like, I'm going to try and win some Warhammer, you wouldn't pick up a Dwarven Mountain Holds army, right? Because it's a tragedy. It's 15% positive win rate, almost no 4-1s, X-Force, even maybe not worse, but no 4-1s. It's only hitting the 3-2, and then it's getting crumped. Royal Clan, only hitting the 3-2, and then it's getting crumped. It's actually a really interesting story there, that there is an absolute glass ceiling for dwarfs, which is basically 3-2.
Right now, it seems, I wonder, is some of that coming out of the fact that they don't play movement well, and now suddenly the game is about closing with your opponent and engaging potentially in the mission set. Is some of that about them not getting a massive buff from something like parry for a lot of their key guys,
units,
key units that already were able to get that 3+ save. There's a lot of reasons why that might be. The excellent channel out there, Dolly After Dark, that you guys could go see. Maybe is he just crying right now? Is he just alone on his channel sobbing? I doubt it. But I think for dwarves, I think like a lot of the popular armies too, a lot of folks sort of have a play style, and they do that play style, and it may not necessarily translate to winning, in the current meta, in the current missions. So it might just be a result of, if you do want to try hard with dwarves, you got to start thinking a little more outside the box and getting outside of what used to work. Because I don't think they necessarily had this dire of prospects in the last in sort of the last meta that we saw, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
So can I tell you a stat that I find incredibly ironic here? It's Bretonnian exiles, right? They have a high positive win rate potential, but actually a low cap on 4/1s, and so they are literally oppressing the weaker forces. They are like it's like a class system. They're like, and this is one of the things that we do talk about. Like if we had more data sets, or if we broke the data down more, there's also ways to look at how the top armies perform versus the middle and the bottom armies when you stratify them out. And sometimes some armies are just incredibly good into just crushing the fat middle or the bottom tiers.
I think that would be Wild Herd. Wild Herd with they've basically half the time they've got a positive win rate, but they never get to 4 wins or above. That feels like Beastmen are just, they're eating dwarves and goblins and things like that. That's what that feels like to me.
Which is very fun. So, like, I would say, like, as an overview, I'd say the game's not in a perfect place. There's some armies, and they are that are both underperforming and overperforming, which I would love to see Games Workshop do stuff about. And I think some of this is as simple as points. Some of those units, some of those armies could just afford to lose a few points, as an example. A quick community fix, which is very easy, is just let a couple of those overperforming armies play with a few less points. And then let some of those underperforming armies play with a few more points. That's something we used to see in the past. Or maybe that's something we could talk about me and you could talk about in the future. But before we do any of that, what's your vibe looking at this? Does any of this surprise you? And like, what's your kind of vibes on like what you've seen from the results, like wholesale?
So a few of these things that stand out to me are, one, obviously, and I can't believe you of all people didn't shout this out, Chaos Dwarves. More often than not, winning more games than they lose.
Shut up.
Also having potential to go 4 wins. Fantastic. Love to see that.
Shut up. Like, I didn't mention it on purposely.
Actually, as a matter of fact, you have a number of legacy factions that do seem like they're worth playing. Chaos Dwarves, Lizardmen. There's got to be Renegade Lizardmen. Almost certainly this is a Renegade skewed by Renegades.
Most likely only Pip.
Ogre Kingdoms. These are not miseries to play. That is really, really nice to see. Mort Cult is I think a big headline here, in that it seems to have been really, really hurt by the errata and the match play guide versus again just regular Tomb Kings, which are again getting into that oppressive meta force territory there. Alongside vampire counts, like the sort of the sub factions of Tomb Kings, definitely not as good as the Grand Army options. That seems to be apparent, and I think does Beastmen Bray Herds? There you go. 42% of the time they're going above 500. Wild Herd, in its eight appearances, is 50% above 500. 50% of the time above 500. That's really wonderful to see. Skaven essentially has gone 4-0 once.
Yeah, it's worth noting that the numbers at the side now are not games played, but this is instances of people. So the numbers at the side change up. Yeah,
appearances. Yes. Empire of Man, which we saw with that massive meta share, and also lots of results, and also getting, aggregate wise, a almost positive win rate or a positive win rate. Yep. I can't recall which one. Still, though, most of the time, well below 500. So there's something.
Empire of Man were sat around like a 40,
just below. Yeah.
So you would look at Empire of Man and be like, oh, that's pretty healthy. But actually, when we do the next chart, you can see that actually that health is pretty minimal. Like they're often going like 3-2. No, they're not. They're more going 2-3 more of the time than anything else. So they're really, they're not necessarily doing as well as you would hope. And also goblins like bump up a little bit. They end up in this section, which I think is fun.
And where are our friends, the Warriors of Chaos?
Warriors of Chaos are really low, 24% on the positive win rate potential. I'm gonna put Warriors down to there just being a lot of people, It's interesting.
A lot of YOLOing going on. I think they probably suffer from the same thing as Orcs and Goblins.
I'd say it's actually slightly different. If I'm allowed to, I think that what we're seeing with Warriors of Chaos is they are the Space Marines and Stormcast Eternals of Old World.
Okay.
They are pretty elite to build and paint up. You don't have to not as many as other armies. They're easily accessible. They're big chunky models and they're big dudes. Bit of a success story, I'd say. Like the Warriors of Chaos being, I feel that's accurate. They're the Space Marines. I know they're not. That would kind of make sense for the Old World. And I think because of that, you generally get a lot of, dare I say, hobbyists. Dare I say, people just like having a good time.
Just starting the game, like getting in. It's like in our best factions for new players. They were, I don't know if they were top of S tier, but they should have been, or they're up there anyway. And they have, they also have a lot of choices you can make. And I think Orcs and Goblins are similar. So like if there's a lot of units that call to you because you think they're cool, there's a very good there's a higher opportunity for you to pick ones that aren't necessarily the best, from a numbers perspective. So overall though, I also do think that, the halves here are not that surprising outside of perhaps Chaos Dwarves and Dark Elves. That they stuck in there.
They did
50% of the time going over 500. So like there are ones that are a little bit surprising. I think obviously Perfect Army here, Beastmen come out in a landslide. You're going to win more games than you lose, but you're probably not going to win that tournament though.
You're just gonna hang out in a bush, maybe one day to grab it,
making some odd goat noises.
Okay, so that's I've definitely slunk back in my chairs. I've been looking at the numbers.
Got a little slouchy.
Yeah, got a bit slouchy. Apologies about that.
We got into it.
I got deep into it. So this is fun, and also it's worth pointing out, as I think I said at the top of the show, and I'll finish off again. Not enough data here to be like concrete. And also takes a lot of analysis, which obviously is informed by our experiences, but also by comments that you leave down below if you're watching this as a video, by people in our Discord, via Patreon. Like that's all like a conversation that's happening. And again, like these could change drastically. Like this is 19 events. You could put 10 more events in, and a lot of these numbers could move around.
Yeah,
so it's always,
by next week you'll have 10 more events. So that's totally like going to be way different.
Yeah, so it's absolutely worth like pinch of salt in it, like. But I wanted us, and also because like if this data set is low, other data sets are very low, if that makes sense, and especially if you're including one-day events, if you're including stuff pre the match play guide, that ends up making it even weirder and makes it much more statistically noisy. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I know that there's going to be mathletes who are going to at me.
Yeah, and honestly, rightly so. I mean, how much stake you put into this, is your mileage will vary. There will be sort of a margin of error based on those sample sizes that would be much bigger or smaller, just statistically. That's another cool thing, actually, that Old World Rankings does bake in is margin of error bars. And so like, yeah, I think though that they are indicative of a meta that to me internally makes sense. It makes sense that some of those armies could have gone on heaters with the low sample sizes, or just got matchups that were good, or were played by passionate people who love the game and also that faction. So like intuitively, I think there wasn't anything there that really, really rocked my world, especially in the ones that had the larger samples of games. It makes sense. Whereas of Chaos being so low is surprising, and perhaps I think they can definitely outperform that number quite easily. But overall, that was quite informative. I think kind of confirmed a lot of my biases about where I thought the game was, and ultimately, I think there's a lot of factions out there worth playing, a lot of tournaments worth going to, especially the Square-Based Open Toronto on October 18th and 19th. And then followed by the Cali Cup in November. So yeah, I think that Old World is a game that survives because it's played. So get out there and play. And if you think those numbers are bullshit, go make some new ones for us.
Making new numbers is always the best bit. Being like, I can win events in Mort Cult. Oh, watch me go, which is fun. So yeah, I think that's a really inspiring thing as well. And also, like you said earlier on in the show, it's also nice to get some confirmation if you're just getting your ass kicked to Skaven all the time. That actually
it's not just you.
Yeah, and also like winning 2 games of Skaven is like going 5-0 with Cathay. So setting yourself those goals, those achievement lines, super healthy and important.
Actually,
which
it's twice as rare as going 5-0 with Cathay or going 4-0 with Cathay. So,
Skaven players, you got to win 1 game. I think there's a lot of people who are going to be listening to this right now. Is like, just win 1 game, you say? I'll try that. That sounds like a good challenge. So yeah, good. This is especially great. Thanks to Rob, as always, for putting this data together.
Thank you.
Super helpful. We'll also put the actual pictures in our Discord as well, so you can go check them out there and have a look. And of course, just leave some comments.
And yeah, some really big takeaways. 1, always upload your list if you're going to a tournament. 2, if you are of a meta that we may not have a particular insight into, maybe it's not English speaking, maybe it doesn't use these things, let us know. How do we find you? 3, play games. This game is awesome. It's a lot of fun. And I hope this is just another way of looking at it that makes you think it's fun.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree, 100%. And listen, especially thank you to everyone. You're all the best. Loads of love from me to you. Loads of love from Val. Loads of love from us. Look after yourselves. Stay healthy. Stay well. Go play some games. See you soon. Goodbye.